I've always thought of myself as a reasonable man, logical, not the type to spiral over a missed text or invent stories out of silence. Jealousy in my mind was for people who didn't trust their partner, and I trusted Sarah. Implicitly. At least I used to. We'd been married 6 years. Not without the usual ups and downs arguments over money, weekend plans, her tendency to overwork, my habit of shutting down when I got overwhelmed, but nothing unusual. We had a rhythm, or so I thought. That night started like most Thursday evenings. I got home around 6, dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, fed the dog, and heated up leftovers. Sarah had texted earlier that she'd be home late, something about a quarterly wrap-up meeting with her department. I didn't think twice. She worked in marketing, and I knew these dinners happened, especially toward the end of a project cycle. Around 9:15 p.m., I was on the couch watching a documentary I wasn't even half interested in, scrolling Reddit between scenes. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creak of the walls adjusting to the cooling air. I remember I had just picked up my phone to check the time when it buzzed in my hand. Sarah. I smiled out of habit. It was second nature. I hit answer and held it to my ear. But no voice greeted me. Instead, there was laughter. Male laughter, loud, brash, unfiltered. The kind that comes from either too many drinks or an inside joke. Then came the unmistakable sound of music playing through speakers, jazzy and upbeat, and the clink of a glass being set on a hard surface. I was about to say hello again when I heard her. Sarah, my wife, she was laughing too. Not the polite kind she used with coworkers or strangers. This was different, full, almost flirty. Then she said something. I didn't catch every word, but I distinctly heard her say, "You're the worst." Her voice was light, teasing even. Tender? That's when another voice cut in. Lower, male again, more deliberate this time. He said something I'll never forget. "You always know how to make me forget everything else." There was a pause. Then the call ended. Just like that. At first I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. I just sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, screen dimming to black. The room was dead quiet again, and suddenly the air felt heavier, like all the oxygen had been socked out of it. I stared down at the screen, waiting for it to light up again with a follow-up call or maybe a text, "Oops. Didn't mean to call." But nothing came. I checked the call log. 23 seconds, and she never said my name, never addressed me. It had clearly been a butt dial, but the problem wasn't that she didn't know she'd called me. The problem was what I had heard. The laughter, the intimacy, the tone, the sentence. "You always know how to make me forget everything else." That's not something you say to your manager. That's not something you say to someone at a work dinner. That's something you say to someone you're close to, very close. I didn't move for a while, didn't speak. The sound of her laughter kept looping in my head. That voice I thought I knew so well, now sounding like it belonged to someone else. My first instinct was to call her back, but my thumb hovered over the button and didn't press. What would I even say? So I sat there and waited. An hour passed, then 2. She finally walked through the front door a little after midnight. "Hey," she said casually, kicking off her heels. "Sorry I'm so late. Dinner ran long." Her hair was a little messy from the wind, and she looked tired but not disheveled. Not suspicious. Still, I found myself staring at her like I was trying to recognize a stranger. I half expected her to look guilty somehow. Nervous. But she didn't. She walked into the kitchen like it was any other night and poured herself a glass of water. "You eat?" she asked, voice muffled behind the rim of the glass. "Yeah," I said. Nothing else. She didn't mention the call. I waited, hoping she would. A simple, "Hey, sorry for the weird call earlier," or even a laugh about it. But nothing. Either she didn't know it happened, or she was hoping I wouldn't bring it up. I didn't. Not that night. Instead, I watched her go about her routine change into pajamas, brush her teeth, set her alarm. She kissed me on the cheek before getting into bed. Same as always, but it didn't feel the same. I laid there, staring at the ceiling while she fell asleep beside me, listening to her breathe, wondering where she really had been and who had made her laugh like that. The next morning over coffee, I finally brought it up. "Hey, weird thing." Last night I got a call from you, like around 9:30. Her eyes paused mid-scroll on her phone. Oh? She said, furrowing her brow like she had to think about it. Huh, that's odd. Must have hit it by accident during dinner. My phone was in my purse the whole time. I waited to see if she'd say anything more. Nothing. It sounded like a party, I added. She shrugged. Yeah, it was kind of loud. They had us in the back of the restaurant, but there was a bar event happening too. Sounded like you were having fun. Not really. Just trying to make the best of it. She smiled, but it didn't touch her eyes. And that was it. No apology for the accidental call. No mention of what I might have heard. Just a vague explanation and a brush-off smile. I should have let it go. I wanted to, but I couldn't unhear the words from the man's voice, or the sound of Sarah laughing in a way I hadn't heard from her in months, maybe longer. Something in me shifted after that, the tiniest crack in the foundation. I didn't accuse her. I didn't push. But for the first time in years, I felt distance between us that I hadn't put there. I told myself not to overthink it, to wait and see. But a part of me already knew that night wasn't just a glitch or an awkward coincidence. It was a turning point. And once the doubt settles in, it doesn't go away. It finds a home in everything. After that call, everything changed. Not immediately. Not in the way people might expect with shouting or accusations or some dramatic confrontation. No, what happened was quieter, slower, more dangerous in its silence. I became hyper-aware. The way Sarah spoke, the way she dressed, the way she moved through our house. Our life like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't just accidentally called me and let someone else's voice fill the air between us. I didn't tell her that I'd heard more than she thought. I didn't tell her that the man's voice hadn't just been laughing. It had said something intimate, personal, the kind of words that don't belong in a meeting. Instead, I just watched. And once you start watching, it's impossible to stop. I started noticing little things, details I would have missed before. Or maybe I had missed them. Maybe I didn't want to see. But now they felt like clues, signs, warnings I'd been too comfortable to read. She began working late more often. Not once or twice, but consistently, 3-4 nights a week. Always with a reason. The project's on a deadline. We're reviewing the client pitch deck. There's a team dinner I can't miss. But the frequency didn't match the calmness in her voice. It was too casual, too routine. Like she was expecting me not to ask questions. She stopped asking if I wanted to join her for dinner. Stopped texting during the day like she used to. Her replies to my messages got shorter. At first I figured she was just busy. Everyone goes through hectic seasons at work. But I started to realize it wasn't just her schedule that had shifted. It was her. The change in her wardrobe was subtle at first, a few new pieces here and there, but then it snowballed. New high heels, designer dresses, lipstick shades I'd never seen her wear before. She was always polished now, impeccably styled, as if she were heading to a photo shoot rather than a brainstorming session. One night I asked her about a new black dress I found hanging in the closet tag still on. Looks expensive, I said casually. She looked up from her phone and shrugged. Got it on sale. Figured I could use something nice for a formal dinner next week. No mention of which dinner, no invite, just a vague nod to some event I was apparently not part of. Her phone was always with her. That was new too. Before, she'd leave it charging in the kitchen, sometimes forget where she placed it. Now it was glued to her hand. If I walked into the room, she'd flip it face down. Notifications never made a sound anymore. I caught her typing once and asked, "Talking to anyone I know?" She smiled without looking up. Just work stuff. Work. It always came back to work. But the Sarah I knew used to vent about work. She used to talk about annoying clients and coworkers who didn't pull their weight. Lately, nothing. No complaints, no updates. It was as if work had become a sealed part of her life, something I wasn't supposed to look at, let alone question. I started replaying the last few months in my head like an investigator at a crime scene. Conversations, schedules, little behavioral shifts. I even thought back to the week she bought that new perfume something, sweet and floral, that she said a colleague had recommended. She'd worn it every day for 2 weeks, then stopped suddenly. I didn't think much of it at the time. Now I wondered who that colleague really was. Even her energy changed. At home, she was distant. Not cold exactly, but removed. Distracted. Like she was always somewhere else in her mind. If I asked about dinner plans or brought up the idea of a weekend away, she'd nod absently or say, "We'll see," and then change the subject. She was always tired too, always drained. "Long day," she'd say as she collapsed onto the couch. But I noticed she had energy for phone calls she took in the hallway, speaking in a low voice I couldn't quite make out. I remember once waking up around 2 a.m. to find the bathroom light on. I got up and found her sitting on the closed toilet seat, phone in her lap. She jumped slightly when I walked in. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Was just checking emails." "In the bathroom?" I didn't say anything then either. I just nodded and went back to bed, heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. Because in that moment I knew. I didn't have proof, but I knew. Something was wrong. Other people started to notice too. My parents asked why she hadn't come to dinner in weeks. "She's always busy," I said, trying to make it sound normal. My mom gave me a look, not judgmental, just concerned. Even our friends had started asking questions. At a mutual friend's birthday party, someone casually asked, "Where's Sarah?" I froze for a second. I honestly didn't know. "She had to work," I said. "Oh, again?" the friend replied, raising an eyebrow. That hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just me noticing anymore. I remembered how things used to be. Just a year earlier, we were planning a trip to Portland. Talking about starting a family. She'd always said she wanted a house with a backyard and a dog that would sleep at the foot of our bed. We talked about schools, neighborhoods, even baby names once in passing. It felt like a dream then. Now it felt like something I'd made up. She stopped mentioning any of it. If I brought it up, she'd wave it off. "We're not ready for all that." Or, "Let's not rush things." But we'd already been rushing. Towards something. Or maybe away from something. I just hadn't seen it. One night I tried to reach her while she was working late. I called twice, no answer. Then I texted, "Everything okay?" She replied an hour later. "Yeah, just slammed. Might be another late one. Don't wait up." I didn't, but I checked her location through Find My Phone. We'd set it up years ago during a trip abroad and never turned it off. She was at some restaurant downtown, not her office, not even close. I looked up the place online. It wasn't a chain, it wasn't a team-friendly spot. It was sleek, romantic, pricey. I didn't say anything the next day. I didn't say anything because I was scared, not of her, but of the truth. The moment I confronted her, something would break, and I wasn't ready for that. Instead, I kept pretending, playing the role of the good husband while the foundation under us slowly cracked. She smiled when she walked through the door, kissed me on the cheek. "How was your day?" "Fine. Always fine." But my mind was no longer still. It had become a storm. Every conversation twisted into a question. Every routine felt like a performance, and every silence between us was a spotlight on everything we weren't saying. I'd catch myself just staring at her when she wasn't looking, studying her face, wondering what she was thinking, who she was texting, who she was smiling for when I wasn't around. That's what infidelity does. Even before you have proof, it fractures trust. It makes you suspicious of shadows and second-guess the warmth in someone's voice. And the worst part, you start to question yourself. Was I imagining this? Was I being paranoid? Had I missed some crucial piece of her unhappiness and driven her away without realizing it? But then I'd hear that voice again. That man's voice from the call echoing in my head like a ghost I couldn't exorcise. "You always know how to make me forget everything else." That wasn't a mistake. That was a glimpse behind the curtain. And the longer I kept pretending it hadn't happened, the more I felt like I was betraying myself. Something was going on, and I wasn't going to ignore it much longer. They say suspicion is like a slow leak in the ceiling. Subtle at first, barely noticeable. But if you ignore it long enough, the whole roof caves in. That's what it felt like in my head, constant dripping. A quiet but relentless nagging that something wasn't right. And yet I still held back. I told myself maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just overthinking. I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to believe that. But the universe, or whatever force is out there keeping score, didn't want me to wonder anymore. The moment of clarity came on a completely ordinary Tuesday. I had stopped by Sarah's office to drop off her charger. She'd left it at home, and knowing how reliant she was on her devices, especially when she was working late every night, I figured I'd do the thoughtful husband thing and bring it over on my lunch break. I didn't text ahead. Part of me wanted to catch her off guard. Her office was in one of those sleek downtown buildings with glass elevators and a lobby that smelled like citrus and ambition. I'd been there a few times before holiday parties, the occasional +1 event, but never during the day. I walked up to the receptionist, charger in hand. "Hey, I'm just here to drop this off for Sarah." She gave me a polite smile. "She's in a meeting right now, but I can make sure she gets it." Before I could respond, a voice behind me chimed in. "Hey, Mark, you can leave it with me. I'm heading down that way anyway." I turned to see Josh, one of Sarah's colleagues. Young guy, always friendly. We'd met at a few work functions. I nodded, relieved. "Appreciate it," I said, handing him the charger. But then he did something strange. He reached into his bag and pulled out a sleek black tablet. "While I've got you," he said casually, "can you give this to Sarah too? She left it in the conference room." He handed it to me before I could even respond. I remember thinking it was odd. Why not just take it himself if he was going that way? But I didn't question it. Not then. I walked back to my car with both devices. That's when the idea struck me. Impulsive, quiet, dangerous. The tablet. It was warm, like it had just been used. Out of pure reflex, I pressed the power button. It opened immediately. No password screen, no fingerprint lock. Just a home screen full of apps and a soft background photo of city lights. Our city. I should have turned it off. I should have respected her privacy, but I didn't, because the second app that caught my eye was the gallery. It was open left on a thumbnail of a video labeled "Wrap Dinner Rooftop." I tapped it. It started with the camera facing the floor. Someone was fumbling with it. Then the view steadied. It was a rooftop terrace at night string lights, skyline glowing behind them. And there she was, Sarah, my wife, standing next to her boss. I froze. He was leaning in close, too close. Their bodies touched, not in a casual way, but deliberately. Hands on waists, fingers brushing, then hers slipped into his. She was laughing like she meant it, and then without hesitation, he kissed her. Not a drunken peck, not a one-sided mistake. She kissed him back. I don't remember breathing. My chest felt tight, like I'd been punched. My first instinct was to pause the video, but I couldn't. I watched it, all 37 seconds of confirmation that everything I'd suspected was real. This was no misunderstanding. This wasn't about long hours or missed dinners. This was betrayal caught in 1080p. When the video ended, I didn't move. The car was silent except for the whir of the AC. Outside, the city hummed along like nothing had changed, but everything had. I sat there for a long time, not crying, not angry, just numb. There was a strange relief in it, in having proof. Solid, undeniable evidence. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined the distance or the excuses. I hadn't overanalyzed her laugh or the scent of unfamiliar cologne. It had all been real. But that relief was quickly replaced by a slow, rising rage. She had let me doubt myself. She had looked me in the eye night after night and lied. And the worst part? She hadn't even tried that hard to hide it. That tablet could have gone to anyone. What if Josh had seen it? What if someone else in her office had opened that video? Did she not care? Or was she just that confident I wouldn't notice? I scrolled through the rest of the gallery. There were more photos. Some blurry, some clearly posed. Smiles. Champagne. Her boss's hand on her back. Her leaning into him. Every image felt like a slap. These weren't co-workers letting off steam. This wasn't some professional celebration. It was a date, an evening out, a secret. And now it wasn't a secret anymore. I could have driven straight to her office, marched in there, held up the tablet, demanded answers, but I didn't. I didn't trust myself to stay calm. I didn't trust her to tell the truth. Instead, I locked the tablet and placed it in the glove compartment. I knew one thing with certainty: I wasn't going to confront her with emotion. I was going to confront her with facts. That night, I acted like everything was normal. She came home around 10:40, hair still curled, makeup fresh. She kissed me on the forehead and said, "Sorry I missed dinner. The meeting ran long again." I smiled. "It's okay," I replied. She changed out of her dress quickly, too quickly, and tossed it in the laundry. Another piece of evidence scrubbed clean. As she showered, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the spot where she used to keep her wedding ring when she washed her hands. It had been missing for weeks. She claimed she lost it at the gym. I no longer believed that. When she came out of the bathroom in her robe, she looked surprised to see me awake. "You okay?" she asked. "Just couldn't sleep." She nodded. "I'm beat. Going to crash early." She climbed into bed, pulled the covers over herself, and turned away. I stared at the back of her head. I wondered how many times she'd laid next to me after coming home from him. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark, listening to her breath steady, trying to piece together how long this had been going on. How many lies, how many nights I'd waited for her while she wrapped herself around someone else. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was focused. The video wasn't just a mistake, it was a blueprint, a thread to pull, and I planned to pull it all the way down. The next morning, she left early, kissed me on the cheek and said, "Have a good day, babe." Like nothing had happened, like I didn't know. As soon as she was gone, I unlocked the tablet again. I copied the video to a flash drive. I took screenshots. I pulled metadata timestamps, locations. I started my own folder. Evidence. If she was going to lie, she'd have to do it knowing I already knew the truth. And once I had everything, I'd decide what to do next. After I saw that video, something inside me shut off. Some emotional circuit breaker I hadn't even known existed. I thought I'd explode, thought the betrayal would tear through me like a storm. But instead, I went cold, focused. I didn't confront Sarah that night, or the next one. I stopped trying to fix anything and started preparing for everything. It's strange how fast the mind can shift when survival kicks in. The love I thought I couldn't live without. It was still there, somewhere, but it felt distant, like an old photograph of a version of me I didn't recognize anymore. What had replaced it was something sharper, cleaner, clarity, and clarity demanded proof. Real proof. Not just a single video, not just a few blurry photos or a hunch. I wanted something airtight. I wasn't going to walk into this confrontation just hoping to be believed. I was going to walk in knowing I'd already won, so I got to work. First, I remembered something, an old, overlooked detail that suddenly felt like a lifeline. Years ago, when Sarah bought her new MacBook, I had helped her sync it with the cloud. We'd set up automatic backups for her work docs, photos, and notes just in case. She stopped using the laptop a while back when she switched to a newer one, but she never unlinked it. It was still there, tucked into the hallway cabinet, collecting dust, forgotten, or so she thought. I pulled it out, plugged it in, and waited. A minute later, her account popped up, logged in, still connected. The desktop loaded slowly, but once it did, I saw it. Folders labeled Projects, Q4 Materials, Personal, and MISC. I didn't care about spreadsheets or client files. I went straight for voice memos. She had dozens, some dated weeks, some months back. Some were just grocery lists or reminders to herself, but others were different. One in particular made my stomach turn. It started mid-sentence. "I know it's wrong, but I can't stop thinking about you. Last night, I don't know, it just felt like we weren't pretending anymore." Sarah's voice, soft, vulnerable, honest in a way she hadn't been with me in a long time. There were more like it. Confessions she never meant for me to hear. One where she described how he made her feel seen. Another where she rehearsed what sounded like a breakup speech, but it wasn't for me. She ended the message by saying, "He deserves the truth, not this. He, always he, never a name." I copied the recordings onto a separate flash drive. Then I went through her calendar. Syncing that app had been her idea. She liked having our schedules coordinated. I'd forgotten about it. But now looking back over the past 3 months, patterns jumped out. Entries labeled yoga class, dinner W Steph, or client call, don't disturb. I checked the locations, the timestamps. They didn't match reality. The night she said she was with her friend Steph had posted Instagram stories from a concert in another city that same night. Another entry said, solo movie night, but the timestamp on one of her rooftop photos matched that exact evening complete with her boss's arm around her waist and a bottle of red wine between them. She had weaponized the calendar against me. But now it was my tool. I took screenshots of everything, highlighted the fake entries, matched them to messages, photos, voice memos, created a timeline. Each lie had a date, each cover story, a crack in her version of the truth. Once I had enough digital evidence, I moved on to the physical, her purse. I felt a wave of guilt the moment I opened it, but I pushed past it. I found what I expected: receipts, little scraps of paper most people would overlook. One was from a boutique hotel bar I'd never heard of, dated for a night she said she had a team meeting. Another from a fancy restaurant with a name that sounded vaguely familiar, probably from a story she once told me. I looked up the locations. Both were downtown. Both had inmate settings. Soft lighting, high reviews for date nights. I took photos of the receipts, then carefully placed everything back exactly how I found it. Next was the bank account. We'd always kept a joint account for shared expenses and a smaller personal one each for spending money. But recently, Sarah's deposits into our joint account had grown lighter. I had chalked it up to extra work expenses or stress shopping. But I looked closer. There were transfers, consistent time transfers to a secondary account I didn't recognize. I requested a statement from the bank and saw the pattern. Deposits every 2 weeks into this mystery account, then large, untagged withdrawals. That's when I remembered. A few years ago, we opened a savings account together. Emergency fund, we said. We kept it dormant, but it looked like Sarah had quietly reactivated it. Only her name was on it now. I didn't touch the money. I wasn't interested in revenge. I just wanted the whole picture. Once I had everything: videos, voice memos, false calendar entries, bank transfers, I organized it into folders. I gave them boring names like Taxes 2020 and Insurance Renewal in case she ever looked. I emailed a backup to myself, saved it to a private drive, and even printed out a hard copy that I sealed in an envelope and hid in my car's glove compartment. I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was securing my future. The emotional side of me, the part still grieving, wanted to confront her right then. Slam the evidence on the table and ask how long she thought she could lie to my face. But the other part, the strategic part, knew better. I needed to get ahead of this, so I called a lawyer. I didn't even know what kind of lawyer I needed. I Googled divorce attorney near me and picked one with the best reviews and the shortest wait time. Her name was Dana. Straight talking, early 40s, no nonsense. When I walked into her office with a USB drive and a folder labeled Sarah, she raised an eyebrow. I assume this isn't a tax case, she said. No, I replied. It's a marriage case, and I want to know what my options are. She plugged in the drive, scrolled through the files, listened to one of the voice memos. Her face didn't change, but she gave a single, small nod. You have enough, she said, more than enough. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. She explained everything: how the court might view infidelity, how to protect joint assets, what steps I could take without raising suspicion. Then she asked the question I hadn't expected. Do you want to end this quietly or publicly? It caught me off guard. What do you mean? She shrugged. Some people want a clean break. Others want consequences. What are you looking for? I thought about it. Then I said, both. That night, I went home and did something I never thought I'd do. I created a burner email account. No name, no link to me. I compiled a folder of carefully selected images and calendar screenshots. Just enough to tell the story. No need to explain. No need to accuse. I addressed it to HR. Anonymous tip. Attached was the subject line: Employee conduct, confidential. No message, just evidence. I hit send. Sarah was in the shower when I sent it, humming a song I didn't recognize. The water drowned out the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. When she came out, she smiled at me like nothing was wrong. I smiled back. Because now, I knew exactly what was coming. By the time I sat down with Dana for the second meeting, something had shifted inside me. The shock was gone. The heartache dulled. What remained was focus, purpose. I had gathered everything I needed: voice memos, fake calendar entries, receipts, bank statements, videos, even a few screenshots of text from Sarah's smartwatch, backup syncing through a folder she forgot to wipe from her old laptop. Every piece pointed to the same conclusion. She wasn't just cheating emotionally or physically. She was living a second life, one where I didn't exist. I had evidence. I had legal counsel. Now I needed a strategy. I want to get out, I told Dana. I want the house, my financial share, and peace. That's it. But I also want her to understand what she's done. I don't want drama. I want consequence. She leaned back in her chair and nodded. Then we do this clean. No outbursts, no threats, no mistakes. And if we play this right, she won't see it coming. That's when she introduced the timeline. A quiet exit. No early confrontation. Let her dig herself in deeper, unaware that everything she does is being tracked. The more she reveals, the stronger my position becomes. Let her lie again and again. Let her give me more rope. But we would strike only once, decisively. Until then, I had to play the role. I had to be the husband who believed her, the man who understood late meetings and sudden trips and the exhaustion she wore like armor. I had to smile when she walked in, pretend not to flinch when she touched me, respond kindly when she texted that she'd be home late again. It made me sick, but I did it, because now I had a playbook. Step 1 was securing my finances. Over the course of a week, I rerouted my direct deposits to a new personal checking account. I updated logins, changed security questions, and reviewed joint credit cards. I froze one, canceled another. Not enough to raise red flags, but enough to slow her down if she decided to grab what wasn't hers when things fell apart. I also moved some of my valuables, old savings bonds, a small family heirloom watch, documents related to my late father's estate, into a safety deposit box under my name only. I didn't want them misplaced during the chaos that was bound to follow. Step 2 was surveillance. No, I didn't hire a private investigator. I didn't need to. She left a trail without realizing it. The backup calendar, the synced smartwatch. A second cloud drive she forgot was logged in on the iMac in our guest room. I checked it daily, quietly, carefully. Photos from her work trip in San Diego revealed a hotel room with 2 glasses on the nightstand, selfies that never made it to her public gallery, and one short video where she turned the camera on herself in a bathrobe, whispering, "Wish you were here," before laughing softly and flipping the lens toward a man's arm resting on her thigh. It was blurry, but it wasn't mine. I copied that too. Step 3 was observation. I started documenting. I kept a log, nothing elaborate, just a small notebook in my desk drawer. Dates, times when she left, what she said, what I saw in the backups. It felt like overkill at first, but Dana said it could make all the difference if things turned messy. Judges like patterns, so I gave them patterns. Step 4 was leverage, the hardest part. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd send an anonymous message to someone's employer. But then again, I never thought my wife would have an affair with her direct superior. The HR tip I sent wasn't a rant, it was structured. I attached screenshots of her boss's hand on her waist during a company event, a photo from the rooftop dinner, one audio file from a memo where she said, "If he didn't work for the company, we wouldn't have to be so careful." That was enough. I created the email, sent the package, and deleted the account. No trace, no way back to me. After that, I waited and pretended. Sarah remained oblivious. She kept up the act, and I kept letting her. Her texts were less frequent, her excuses more confident. One night she came home with takeout Thai from the place we used to go when we were still in love and said, "Thought you could use something warm." She smiled like she meant it. I almost laughed. The next day I got a call from Dana. "It's happening," she said. Sarah's company had launched an internal investigation. HR didn't tell her who filed the report. She was summoned into a meeting. Her boss was placed on leave. She was told to stay home until the review was complete. When she came through the door that evening, I recognized something I hadn't seen in her face for months: fear. She didn't talk about it right away. She acted like everything was normal. But I knew. I watched her that night as she paced the living room, phone in hand, whispering in rushed tones. I didn't ask. I just sat on the couch, sipping tea, scrolling through headlines. She eventually walked past me and said, "Rough day." I nodded. "Work?" "Yeah," she said, eyes darting away. "It's complicated." I almost told her then, almost asked her if he was worth it, if the adrenaline of sneaking around was still giving her a high. But I didn't. I wasn't done. Not yet. That night she didn't sleep well. She tossed, checked her phone 4 or 5 times, got up to pee, came back and laid on her side, staring out the window. I watched the silhouette of her body shift under the moonlight and wondered who she was praying would text back. The next morning she was gone before I woke up, but when I opened the shared laptop in the kitchen, I saw her search history. Can you be fired for an office relationship? An employment law, private relationship retaliation. Desperate questions from someone who thought she'd never be caught. And still, she said nothing to me. She came home that night with a bottle of wine and the suggestion that we take a weekend trip. "We've both been stressed," she said. "We should reset, just the two of us." I stared at her for a second too long. Reset? After all this? She mistook my hesitation for interest and leaned closer. "Please," she added, "it would mean a lot." I agreed, smiled. "Let's talk about it tomorrow." She looked relieved. She still thought I didn't know. That weekend, Dana finalized the divorce papers. All the assets were listed. My name was marked for the house. Her withdrawals were accounted for. The bank activity, the voice memos, the photographic timeline, it was all neatly compiled into an exhibit folder marked "Supporting Documentation." She would be served soon, quietly, strategically, by someone else, not by me, because when the time came, I wouldn't be there. Let her read the papers on her own. In a moment of stillness, she couldn't spin into a lie. Let her face the truth without warning, without comfort, without someone to hold her hand while she realized her world had changed. Let her finally see the consequence she'd worked so hard to avoid. I had done everything I could to give her a safe, honest, shared life. She wanted a secret one instead. Now she had it. Alone. Sarah was called into HR and returned home with a box of her things. Fired. Her boss was suspended. She looked pale, empty, like a ghost of herself. Friends stopped calling. Family kept their distance. At home, she acted like nothing happened. Cleaning, cooking, trying too hard to seem normal. But everything felt staged, like she was playing a role in a life she'd already burned down. I didn't react. I let the silence speak louder than anything I could have said. I packed quietly and moved to a small apartment. I thought I'd feel lonely, but instead, I felt free. I started running again, reconnected with friends, remembered who I was before the lies. Sarah sent long texts, some angry, some begging. I never replied. My peace wasn't up for negotiation. Life without her chaos felt clean, simple, honest. The version of me that believed in her was gone, and in his place was someone new, someone finally choosing himself.